This is my quantum memoir. I've just completed this memoir book, and it's got 13 fruit of life spreads in them that I'm going to go through and just kind of see what comes up. So this book actually has a theme. Usually they're just a journaling process that I do where I write down my reflections and thoughts and projections into the spheres. But this book actually, I wanted to dive more into sacred geometry. So it started with a conversation that I had with somebody named Stroopy, and we were talking about the mother of all spheres, which is the larger sphere, not just like one of these small circles. It's more of a collection of the spheres. So I started with researching the vector equilibrium, and I'm really just trying to get perspective on the direction that things move, and not just like with sacred geometry, but cells and plant life and growth, and really overlook these patterns on top of each other. So you'll see that like this is a spread. So this is my flower of life that I typically work with on the right hand side, and then I always do my notes on the left hand side. I've tried it the other way, but this feels like the most accurate, balanced way for me to do it. So again, I was just trying to overlap patterns and systems into my fruit of life that I use for my journaling practice and do it more of like a study guide. So I was just researching everything about sacred geometry, about hexagrams, about the flower of life, really trying to figure out the fruit of life. Who decided that this was called the fruit of life? These 13 spheres that I work with. Who called it that? When did that happen? I know that there's a lot of talk about that it contains all of the platonic solids, but I often see them started from the center sphere or sometimes the outer sphere. So I'm not really seeing a lot of consistent information. So I'm trying to find the original source who said, this is this. So I'm just taking notes, researching things, YouTube videos, online articles, meditations that I do myself. And again, this time, for these spreads that I have in my book, they're oftentimes more journaling. There's a lot more words. But this book, I was really just playing with the patterns and seeing the different shapes overlapped with one another. So you have the vector equilibrium in here, you have the egg of life in here, you have the fruit of life. So, and then I was thinking about the 6 moves. So out here, these are, the inside spheres are more of like the nucleus, the converging energy going into it. And these outer spheres, where I have these little green, like kind of eyes, little seeds, those are the amplification, the potentials that stem out from this purpose that we have in the center. So I guess the reason I'm studying the sacred geometry is because I believe that it has to do with my theory, the quantum memoir theory. It has to do with the change in consciousness and my level of awareness that I've been cultivating over the last few years. So this is like typically how I more frequently do them, where I have words and thoughts in each one of the spheres, and there's specific seed words that make relations and associations. So while you see this is what I usually do, the concept is that all of these spheres are interlinked. They're on the same axis. So this piece of information is similar to this piece of information. Like they mirror each other and relate to one another. Let me really pay attention to this one. It's calling my attention. Which direction does our house need to face? So we have a shipping container that we're going to build into a house, a new tiny house. So I was really exploring feng shui, which is sacred geometry, of which direction I should point. And it related to everything that I've been doing with the studies is which way does this spin? Am I looking down on something that spins clockwise or counterclockwise? Or am I looking at something that spins in a more of a horizontal or vertical, I should say, position? And so by the time I came to the end of this book, I realized that it's not going this way or this way. It's not like yes or no, good or bad. It's much more dynamic than that. It's going all sorts of ways, at the same time. So I maybe more on that later. I don't know. That's just what's popping up in my head. I was studying the heart, like the heart as a Taurus. Just trying to think again, how does this energy move? How is this spinning? How do these interrelate? Is it, as a Taurus, is the energy going into the center? Is it doing it that way, or is it doing it this way? So I'm really just trying to figure out like the spiral and the motion and the movement. And what helped me a lot with, you know, this book, actually just drawing out the patterns versus using the, like I told you, like a journaling practice, actually drawing out the patterns and seeing how they overlap within one another really helped me a lot. And then I also used my iPad and made motion, actually recorded like the movement of the spheres so that I could get an even greater perspective. One thing that this stands out, I really like this idea. Let me see if I can find a better illustration. So when thinking about the nucleus, you know, the fruit or the flower of life, which is all of these petals, all of the spheres arranged together within a double lined or a thicker ring around just these inner spheres, and making me think of like the nucleus, the area, the electromagnetic, the force that's coming in or going out. I realized that that shell, that symbolic circle, where is it at? This ring right here that goes around everything is like a nut. So the whole idea of the sacred geometry is that it's a fruit tree, because we have the fruit of life, we have the seed, the egg, I don't know, do trees come from eggs? Haha. But anyways, the symbolism is that it's a fruit tree, that you have your tree of life, you have your fruit, you have your flower. So that ring, I'm going to make my point, I'm going to get there. That ring is like the nutshell. And for a seed, most seeds would just germinate or sprout or whatever by themselves. But a nut, a hard shell, has to be cracked open for the seed to emerge easily. So that's where squirrels come in handy, right? Then that seed actually gets exposed to be able to grow. So this idea that a nut is a seed contained in a hard shell, which doesn't naturally open to release the seed when it matures. So we, as maturing human beings, if we're not paying attention to the things cracking us open and doing something about it, then we stay unshelled and we can't really mature beyond that point. We can't grow into a new tree. We get arrested development. But if you crack that nut, if you break down this ring of this nucleus, of this energy that you've been programmed with, if you crack that nut, then you'll be able to plant a tree and grow a tree. And then you'll be able to flower the tree. Well, you don't have to do it. It'll just happen naturally. And then the tree will eventually fruit. And then you'll have a forest of trees, a grove of trees. So I really like the idea, like I'm really drawn to the symbolism that these 7 inner spheres of the quantum memoir, like as I use it, these inner 7, you have your purpose, ground, intent, observe, connect, express, and refine. This is the nut. This is the basis of the work that I do within these inner spheres. And then once I crack that, I get to work in these outer 6, which is what I call the 6 potentials or the 6 moves. Because from here, you know, like this is where all life is contained. Let me see if I can find another visual. Aha, this one. So inside this ring, this is where like all life forms from inside this ring. But once you crack that ring and you get into these outer potentials, then you could be a tree, or you could be a human, or you could be a car. Like then matter goes into much more diversity, because this is a fractal. And then this outer sphere, this fractal can go in vast, numerous ways. So yeah, the idea that this is a nut inside that you need to crack open, with these 7 inner seed words, this system of 7. And then you'll be able to expand and explore and create. All right, so then I'm going to go back to where I was. So again, just trying to play with spin and motion and really just going between Metatron and the fruit of life. What are these, this self-similar pattern where the spheres are the feminine aspect, right? All of these spheres. And then the straight lines are the yang aspect or the male aspect. So I kind of have that illustrated here. And then you have these 2, I believe they're called tetrahedrons, but you know, that looks like a triangle, a red triangle and a blue triangle. And those are polar opposites. They're the juxtapose of one another. One is male, one is female. One is positive, one is negative. And not positive and negative as in like good and bad, but more of like an energetic force. So I was going to start a tarot class, but I just have so much going on that I wasn't able to commit to it. So I had started to take notes for that. And the Fool was the first card, but that's all the further that I got. And then it just turned back into Metatron. So these things come to me intuitively. I just kind of view the thoughts that are going on in my mind or what I'm interested in, and then somehow it forms into a purpose for my page. So I have all sorts of notes. I did a lot of studying on that one. You know, I have, so like again, this is a spread. I have my fruit of life on this side, my notes on this side. If I have too many notes, then I go on the back. But I usually keep everything contained into this 4-page spread. Like it's 2 pages, I guess, but 4 sides. So this one I was really focusing more on thought forms because I'm writing the quantum memoir theory. Well, I'm not writing it. I'm learning it and studying it because I know that one day I will write a theory on it. It's really around the idea of sacred geometry and your thoughts and the forms that they make in your life. And it happens automatically whether you fill one of these out or not. Everybody's manifesting their thoughts. So that's why I take great care in putting down the thoughts that I actually want to manifest in this page on the fruit of life based on the notes and the experiences that I'm having. So in this case, I was exploring thought forms as a mental exercise. For me, what happens is it creates a lot of synchronicities. It's almost like a feed, you know, life is a feedback loop. So it gives me information that I can then process, think about in a different way, and then proceed from that space. Yeah, so I'm still exploring angles and spin, but also mixed in with the psychology of it, the thoughts. The rain is starting to happen outside. It's picking up. Okay, so this is the 6 moves. So I have this game that I'm developing called the 6 moves, and it's based on the Buckminster concept, and it's these outer 6 potentials. And that's just from a flat view. If you actually had this into a 3rd dimensional view, this wouldn't be 6 spheres. It would be more than that. But just as a flat playing surface, we have 6 potentials. So my husband and I played this game for our livelihood would be our purpose. How do we use the formula of the quantum memoir with these 6 outer potentials? And so we came up with some and filled it in. And, you know, this is something that's kind of an ongoing project for us. Ooh, I really liked this one. So this felt like a speaker sound. Like, doesn't it look like a speaker? I was trying to really see where is that shell. That's what I'm going to call it. It's a shell. Where is that shell? Like, at what ring is it? And that's what I keep finding out, is that it's not at any one place. Even though most often and in ancient times you see it in this one place, it doesn't have to be there. You can play with it and put it anywhere. But because I was so like yang, so like very factual, I had to find exactly where it goes, and I can only put it there. But in my messing up of where it actually went, I could see that, oh, it doesn't, this is play. This is exploration. Like if I was walking through the woods looking at everything, this is the exact same sort of concept. I'm putting things and looking and feeling them from different arrangements. So I really like this one because it feels like it's like the volume's coming out, like the rain is right now. Woo! Wow, that's awesome. I'm looking here like everywhere. So this is like all the places that they've found this pattern, this inner ring pattern, the shell within all of the spheres there. They found it in all of these different places. So that one is ancient. Is the fruit of life ancient? I mean, it's inside of this pattern, but it's still a more recent development of what it actually is. So I'm like, again, I'm just exploring these concepts so I can find out what they are to me. So what I was trying to do here is I was really trying to look at like the mathematics and the magnetics of force, because I'm really seeing this as convergent. So this is the purpose, is the convergent, it's the drain, it's the inertia. So all of the energy is pouring into your purpose. All of these spheres are centered around this convergent center sphere. And so then, convergent. So then on the outside is your divergent. This is where the energy is, the force. So if it's going in here, like I think of it as a torus, it's the force is pushing out and the gravity of it is coming in. So I'm just trying to look at, vortex math, Fibonacci, all of these different sorts of systems, and see if they all kind of flow in the similar ways, find the similarities and the differences. And what I see is that when I look at it in nature like this, I can relate it to personal aspects of my life. Because somehow they're the same, because it's built on consciousness, not on matter. So yeah, this is just the form that I use is just one gigantic, communication system. And it's not all specifically in words. Some of it is just in visual, like symbology, that I wouldn't even be able to articulate to you, but maybe you looking at it, it'll mean something to you. So it's like a code, this thing that I work in. So this is a good one then to transition to, because this is usually how I do it. It's a code. I'm putting symbols and energy into these little quantum bits of spheres, and then they all relate together and they pull in a larger experience of energy that I integrate in my life, and I put out by speaking it and living it and sharing it. So what this one is, let me take a breath and pause because this is a fun one. Okay, so a few years ago, after I had started the Quantum Memoir, my husband and I were in our tiny house, and we were really just removed from everybody in the world, and thinking about all of this consciousness stuff. And we both were aware of the stoned ape theory, the McKenna brothers, Dennis and Terrence McKenna. And we were like, oh, that's funny, because we're getting stoned. Like, oh, we should have the stoned human theory. And we looked it up, and there was no accounts or website or idea about a stoned human theory. And we're like, what? How could that not be? That's such a grand idea that all of the mushrooms, all of these cannabis, all of these natural medicinal medicines are becoming legal again, and people are able to use them, or we're able to talk about them without the repercussions that we used to have. And so we're like, oh, we should have the stoned human theory. And we've had it, but we haven't ever done anything with it, because my husband was a public school teacher in New York where it was not legal. So we never actually spoke about it. We just knew that we were going to have it for one day when we were ready to do it. Well, this is us ready to do it. So the purpose of this page was cannabis. The Stoned Human Theory is a website that we have where we're going to share our experiences of mushrooms, ayahuasca, cannabis, or any of those sorts of things through the quantum memoir. And these are our journeys. So this was a journey where I was taking bong hits throughout a whole entire day, and I was studying CBD and cannabis and doing meditations and those sorts of things, and smoking, and created this thought form, this spread. So we shared this on the Stoned Human Theory, so others, even if they're not able to actually consume the medicine, they will be able to get a perspective. Not saying that this is right or the only perspective, but they will be able to consume some genuine experience that somebody had of healing with a plant medicine. So that's the Stoned Human Theory that we're getting started. And again, it relates to the quantum memoir because it's based on this thought form process. And what we did is we came up with, I had previously mentioned these inner spheres are the nut. This is like the seed that you are putting a very specific sort of energy into. And then these are your outer potentials. So these 7 seeds always stay the same every time you do a quantum memoir. But these outer spheres, different people might use different words with the seeds inside of them, seed words. So in this case, this is ground. We put environment down here. So we would study our environment for this journey. We would study our body for this journey. We would think about our mindset for this journey. We would explore integration for this journey. We would have gratitude for this journey. And we would notate the doses of whatever it was that we took for this journey. So this is a specific template for the Stoned Human Theory, that every time we go through and do one of these Stoned Human Theory journeys, we'll use very specific seed words, these ones that I just mentioned, that will help us create a collection of data so we can see our overall larger experience later on down the line. And what I might do is I might actually just make me a special book. Yeah, I'm going to have that idea. I'm going to make me just a book for the Stoned Human Theory. That way I have all of them together, because I could see right now this one is mixed in with my sacred geometry. So if I ever wanted to go back and look for my journeys, they're going to be mixed in with everything else, and I would have to go through lots of different books to find them specifically. So I think what I'll do is I'll make a separate memoir book that will just be for my Stoned Human Theory journeys. Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, so then we have this spread. So by the time I started doing this one, I had guests here at my property. So I was not able to study as deeply, but I did have some time in the morning to just kind of be quiet and think and do a little bit of drawing. So with this one, I'm still really thinking about the 6 potentials and how this moves and rotates. So if you see Metatron, who came up with that word, I don't know specifically, and who decided whether it starts at the corner or out here, or the little one inside. I see it in all different ways. So to me, there is no one way. You could do it however the heck you want. But the idea is that you see a shape. In what way are you looking at that shape? This triangle could be setting on or tetrahedron could be setting on the base, and it could be coming up to this point here. And then this green one, you're flat and it's coming down to a point. And so this is where I keep playing with, I can't decide for myself which one I'm looking at. And so now what I'm seeing, what I'm coming to is that, we have this, I'm very boxed into this idea that there's a top and a bottom to something. But that isn't an absolute truth, because when you get out to space, there's nothing that tells you that there's a bottom or a top. It just is all around at once. And especially because then the object might move, right? Like the Earth. So I have to try to stop, I don't know if it's possible, looking at this as a static object that is just facing one way. Like either I'm looking down at it or I'm looking out, at it. because it's screwing me up somehow, or it's informing me of something that I haven't quite figured out. So I can see that like my mind just kind of pops back and forth between, what is this? Am I looking down or am I looking at it? And so then what way does it spin? Up and down or around? And expand and contract. So really just playing with this idea of the vortex. Is the vortex going in the middle, or is there, multiple vortexes coming at all sorts of different directions? So this one, really just focusing on the 13 spheres and how it relates to all of these other systems, like music, octaves, where the beginning, because that was something else that, like with the spin, where's the start and the end? So most of the time I start at ground or intend with one of these two. But really what I thought about, what I realized is that it's purpose. That's where I start. Even if I don't fill in that sphere first, the whole reason why I'm doing it, the whole entire thing, is because of purpose. So I'm always starting with the purpose and ending with the purpose. That's like the fuse that's creating one page fused to the next page, one book fused to the next book. It's always about the purpose right here in the center, and not centered like vertically or horizontally, but centered in a sphere, compact energy. That's like the 0 point field, or the gravity, the love pulling in right there. So I'm going to remove my idea of thinking that I have to start with ground or intend, like the moon cycle, and work my way around any one specific way. The seed words do work that way because that helps if you're depressed and you really need to try to get momentum and energy flowing in a very specific direct current. But overall, there is no dogma to what I do. I'm always trying to break it and recreate it so that I'm always learning, because I don't want to be stagnant. That's not thriving. That's not growth. When I look outside, there is no thing that's stagnant out there. It's always cycling through life and death. And that's sort of what I do. So that is the end, and that's going to start my new beginning. So one thing I did notice, I've been doing these hand-bound books for a few months now, probably like 6 to 9 months. And what I've noticed is that when I get really busy with them, the pages start to rub, the lead starts to rub together, because it's such a forgiving binding that these pages rub together, and now I have lead kind of smeared everywhere, and I don't really like that. And then the other thing is that if I do one like my Stoned Human Theory, I might want to frame this, I might want to scan this, I might want to sell it, and now it's got holes drilled in it for the binding. So I don't know that I actually like having them bound in here, but I really didn't like sliding them in and out of plastic sleeves. So I'm going to go less creative and be more practical and just use binder clips. It might not look fancy, it might not look like something that I could sell to someone, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to print my cover page, and I might even change that in this one, because I do sell these books if somebody wants them, but they're really just created because I wanted them for myself. So here's my new and improved method. I just have kind of like the logo. Like, I don't even really care so specifically about a logo, but I just have my cover page for my memoir. I'm using the binder clips so that I can have my pages just come out, work on them individually, not get the lead all mixed up, like shuffled up into the page. That way I can use these as art pages. And then here will be my spread. So I'll just take out these 2 pages. I'll work on those today. And then I'll put this book aside. So that everything stays nice. I don't know if I'll love doing this, but I think at this juncture it's going to be the most practical way to do it. So then I have my old book and this one to set aside. I'll have my 2 pages that I'll work on today. And this paper, I just want to say, this paper, I love this paper. It is, it's very thick cardstock. And it's hemp. I can't remember the percentage of hemp, but it's recycled consumer paper and mixed with hemp. And you can kind of see those little flakes in it. Absolutely love it. And it's softer on my eyes than just using bright white paper, which was kind of irritating my eyes for a while. I'm a very sensitive creature. So this paper works excellent for me. And then one other thing I wanted to point out was, so I'm doing my spreads, you know, on paper as I usually do, but I've also been starting to do these videos on YouTube and putting them on Instagram as well, where I play around with the shapes that I'm doing on my paper and the studies that I'm doing on paper in a digital way. So I just kind of wanted to show that. So I'm getting these like random thoughts. Okay, what is this? How does it move? What does it look like? How are they coming together? Like, what are the steps of them? And then I'm putting it to fun music. So then what I do is, if I need to get the perspective again, then I can just go to my video and I can just fast forward it and look for that part. Because I have something with my memory where I can't remember everything that I consume. So I'm trying to find the easiest, simplest way to create notes for myself so that I'm constantly able to remind and reconsume the information. So I'm basically reprogramming myself from how I had been taught when I was in grade school, in grammar school, in high school. So this is my new study. I have a system. I'm going to go with it and, you know, experiment, play with it for a while, see what it produces. And then when I'm done with it, I will try something new. So that's that. The other thing that I'm going to do, the change that I'm going to make is that, you know, I do my notes on this page and I do my fruit of life thought form on this side. What I'm going to start doing is I'm going to draw another fruit of life on the back side so that they're an exact replication. You know, I'm going to do the measurements. I'm going to use my ruler, my protractor, compass, and all of that to do fruit of life on both sides of the paper. So one side is my thought form, the words that I'm writing, and then the other side of it will be what I just showed in the last book, which will be my sacred geometry, patterns, and frequency, so that the way they work together in one form. So that is the Quantum Memoir 2.0, or maybe 5.0. The updates and refinements of what I'm going to do with my practice, and then see what it produces for me. So yeah, let's get started.